Good morning. Wanted to make another video here, and I think this one might come down to be the most informative video. Today I'm going to welcome Bill Hayes. Bill is a longtime friend. In fact, I think he's one of the first people that I met when I moved to Austin watching a UFC fight. And Bill's a smart MF. He's been in the building side, building himself. He now holds a very important job with Legend Communities as the COO, and handles quite a bit of all the development. So the reason why I wanted to invite Bill and talk to him a little bit and just answer some questions is what's going on in development. So Bill, welcome.
Good. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So let's just cut to the chase. So if you guys don't know, Legend Communities does quite a bit in the western part of Travis County, but honestly does a lot of development throughout all of Austin and all the way down to the coast. Most well-known in Austin for Rough Hollow. I think it's 16 years since you guys started Rough Hollow?
That's about right, yeah.
And it's still going strong, and it seems like that project, it's almost like, and I hate to use the analogy, it's like cancer. It's like it just keeps on spreading. It won't stop.
Yeah. We're close to the end now. Finally, we can see the end. But with these master plan communities, it's like you live with them forever. You just get, at some point, it's like you just have had enough. But we're close to the end, and it's kind of nice to see it all coming together and materializing, all the different parts and pieces, and sort of what you imagine it would be, and it's rewarding to see it happen like the way that you hoped it would happen.
Absolutely. So the thing that's most interesting, even though Bill could speak probably for hours on development throughout Central Texas, really just trying to hone in on Austin in general. And the interesting thing, even though Bill wasn't the COO of Legend Communities for the full 16 years, he's been there for quite some time. And he's been in this area for quite some time and building and knows. So, with Rough Hollow example being up for 16 years, it's, the easy math to see that it's been up and down through a couple downturns. So what I wanted to reach out or ask Bill is really as a developer, as we're in the thick of where we're at, what have you guys seen, and what do you see post development wise, and what are you hearing from builders?
So it's really been interesting that the recent activity is better than I expected. We went through for a lot of March with essentially no sales activity at all. And so we have, builders report to us on a weekly basis what the sales that they have gotten. And, I think it's probably 3 weeks in a row that it was zero across all builders. And then last week, for the first time, we had 5 sales, which would put us ahead of our annual pace. Usually, spread over a year, we're about 4 a year, just slightly less. Obviously this is typically the more active time, so it's a little bit higher than that. But I think that there were 5 sales, including one that was over $1 million, was really surprising. I think most builders have put a pause on things, and we're just not sure about how to proceed. And they found sort of creative ways to transact business, and found that they still had buyers out there that were interested in moving forward, and it resulted in those sales. It'll be interesting to see if that trend continues, or if that was just a little bit of pent up demand and those people just absolutely had to move and buy new homes regardless. Rough Hollow is a big relocation community, a lot from California. But is this going to continue, or is this just like a little blip that was just a bottleneck of people that wanted to transact business, for the past few weeks, and they finally got to? But time will tell. But in talking to the builders, It's everybody is cautiously optimistic, I would say. And again, sort of um, like anything, Austin has always been at the top, one of the best markets. So is it, there's undoubtedly going to be some correction nationally, but does Austin fare better than others because of all the things it has going for it? Its natural beauty, a place like Rough Hollow in particular, being on the lake and having all those amenities and, quality builders and all that, you know, it's going to still do okay. It won't have as good of a year as it would have had, but for the people that do want to relocate, that do want to move into a new home, you know, they're going to pick a Rough Hollow over, let's say, another community that doesn't quite have all the things and all the, the same things to offer. And we still do relatively well, just not as well as we could have. I think that's sort of what I'm feeling. And, we're fortunate to have a really good group of builders that again, it's like whatever the industry, whether it be realtors or builders or developers, the cream always rises to the top. And, the guys that just are in business and have been doing well just by their sheer existence over the past few years, it's those bottom people that get wiped out with times like this. And, you and I have talked about that and have seen that over the years. The last correction we had, just wiped out that bottom portion, and the strong survived. Some did well, but they survived, and then they really flourished when a good market hit.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting. One clarity I want to make there, because obviously us realtors and developers and builders are going to understand what Bill said about, 5 sales just for the general consumer, because the general consumer is probably thinking, oh my God, a community like Rough Hollow, they only sold 5 homes in a week. That's 5 new homes through builders, through the developer, not resale. So that's a big number, because you think during this time and people coming through, and again, on average, you see Rough Hollow and what it's thrived. Bill and I were talking, they average 4 sales. So they're actually doing better than what they do in a normal week through the developer. So
yeah, 4 sales a week translates to about 170 a year.
nice.
That's our annual new sales in Rough Hollow. I don't know what the stats are for resales, but it's probably at least that equivalent of that, if not more, especially as we get more and more homes in there. Rough Hollow right now we're probably about 1,100 homes,
right,
on our way to just shy of homes, units, some condos, some single family, a combination, living units of some sort. We're a little over 1,100, and we're going to end up around 2,000 when it's all done.
Wow.
So, that resale activity will continue to tick up. But for us, for new sales, just purely new sales, 5 is a good week, because whatever that translates to, probably close to 200 in a year.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah. Bill and I were talking, we saw similar to, so we're all sort of following this in suit, I believe. And I think, all realtors, all developers, 4 weeks prior, we were 4 or 5 weeks prior, we were dead, literally trying to figure out ways to keep ourselves busy. And then last week, I won't say the floodgates open, but activity and sales started happening. So I agree with Bill. We don't know what the future is going to bring. We have no idea where we're going with this. And we can only take what we have in hand. But I do think, as Bill mentioned, Austin is still a pretty exciting, sexy, beautiful place that people want to be. And I do think there was a little bit of a bottleneck at the end of people starting to think about buying. And then they finally got to the point where I think there was a little anxiety, frustration, and then school let out early, or not let out. They're still in virtually, but they weren't going back to school. So I think a lot of families around the country and in Austin just decided, hey, if we're going to do it now, we don't need to wait till May 26th. We can do it right now. So I think it's been good. It's just going to be interesting to see how this holds up.
Right.
So, because you guys obviously, and I'm off on these numbers, but probably 75% single family residential. You got some multifamily, you got some commercial, you got stuff down the coast. Where do you sort of see, where are you seeing development that's going to sort of thrive during these times, and then the kind of development that you see that's going to sort of slow down and maybe become a little non-existent, or at least a lot smaller than it used to be.
Yeah, so I think that what a lot of people have discovered through this, shelter in place and all that is sort of the importance of home and, having the right sort of home and having the right, whether it's the builders that have the multi-generation type plan set up or, whether it's older parents that come in and or kids that boomerang back, having that set up. I think that the single family home will do quite well relative to other parts and pieces or parts of the industry. Having having that right sort of setup, even going up to the, like in Rapala, we have the Peninsula, which is high end, and those custom lots. And, those people have the opportunity to essentially create a resort in their backyard. And so, if they can create some of that experience so that, as they, you know, appreciate or rediscover, whatever you want to call it, that they can have all those things in their backyard or their home. I think that those things will continue to do really well. The things that I think are, anything in hospitality is really scary right now. And, we have a project that we're looking at that, redeveloped a piece of land on 620 that had multiple components of it. And one of them was a hotel. That's off the table. Yeah, there's not going to be a hotel on there because, who knows what's going to happen with that. Right. But, I think that anything that has density to it is kind of scary. Mm-hmm. Just as you look at a place like New York, there's lots of factors that go into this, and we're still trying to understand and figure out all the components that cause New York to have, such a huge proportion of the virus relative to other cities. But there's no doubt that having people densely compacted in a place, as you do all your social distancing and all that, it's tough to do in a place like that. And so I think things with real heavy density are pretty scary right now. And I think that a lot of builders would be, or developers would be leery of how to proceed with that or figure out ways to make, because even if things all open back up, you still have to have the buyer's confidence. And there's certainly going to be buyers out there that are concerned about safety, regardless of what the government says. So, how do you figure out how to give them that confidence that it's going to be okay? So I think as you get more dense, it gets a little more unsure and concerning from the developer standpoint. I think the single family, especially if you can do the multi-generational type of plans and, create, a place, whether it be your backyard or whatever, I think those are the areas that will still do okay. Do they do as well as they were prior to all this? Who knows? Probably not. But relatively speaking, relative to the other parts of the business, I think those are the ones that do better.
And I don't know if you've heard it, it might be too soon to hear anything from builders, because obviously you have a number of builders that have already submitted plans to the city, gotten approval, and there's no hidden fact that, the land that you bought 16 years ago and the land that you're developing on today is much more expensive. Building went up. Typically, you chop those lots into smaller lots. When you chop into smaller lots, inherently the houses become smaller because you got less of a footprint to build a house on. And where I'm going with this is I spoke to Shan Bankin, somebody's called him, and I know you should know Shan. And he's seeing the trend, or believes the trend is going to be that, we were going from, you used to have, everyone had to have this big opulent, in their mind, what they considered a mansion, and mansion means several different things, but having a theater room, having a dedicated office, having several living places in a house. And that sort of over the last 10 years went by the wayside. We went to more of the minimalistic, smaller master bedrooms that were nice, but smaller. The opposite of big went to master closets and great rooms and kitchens, smaller offices, smaller spaces that most people do not entertain in. Usually you're worried about your master, you're worried about your family room and kitchen, And then everything else is just sort of secondary. Secondary bedrooms got a little bit smaller because the kids don't spend much time in there. But Shan sees the trend, it's going to actually change. Now people are going to want, as you said, multi-family homes. We probably want to have the theater room again because they need a space to do something else, bigger game rooms. So are builders already starting to talk about, hey, how are we going to change our product, or where do you see that going?
I think the biggest thing that, and this has already been a trend that's been out there, but I think the biggest thing is going to be that, figuring out those plans that essentially it can be two houses, right? It's like, one footprint, and you can have your space for your elderly parents that, they have some sort of little kitchenette or whatever, but you have one garage and you have one family room and, all those pieces, but they still have their own personal space. I think there'll be an even greater emphasis on trying to find those plans that can fit those needs that do fulfill that multi-generational need. I think that's going to be even more important because, you're a perfect example, right? You have your mom living with you, and you custom design your plan to accommodate her being there all the time, and her having her own personal space. And it's like you can do both. She can engage with the family, or she can be by herself, and she doesn't need to come out essentially. And so, builders trying to figure out, the better mousetrap, a better way to do that. And when you get into the production world or the semi-custom world, where you can't design it from scratch with all those pieces, you got to be able to be smart enough as a builder that you design something that can fit a lot of needs and work in a lot of different ways and plan options and those type of things that it can flex to accommodate that. So I think that'll be the biggest push, is to figure out plans that can fulfill that. And to to Shan's point about things had gotten smaller, a big part of that was it's just so expensive to build. And some of that was a result of, okay, if it's going to cost me whatever, for production, the average home in Rough Hollow is about $188 a square foot. And you just get more expensive from there in custom stuff, $300-400 a foot. If it's going to cost me $400 a foot in a custom home, do I need a secondary bedroom that's 12 by 14? Or can I do a secondary bedroom that's 12 by 12? And so they were going to his point about shifting that footage around. It's like being as smart as you can to, considering the cost to build, have the plan that can do everything for everybody, but not have the wasted space, and have the big rooms that can be your kitchen, living, dining. It's all one big room, and everybody can enjoy that together. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest thing. Other than that, I think it's a little early to say, what other kind of adjustments the builders are going to make, as much as I think that is just going to, with something that was already on the builder's horizon, has been magnified based on what's happened over the past, 45 days.
Crazy. And I guess the other side of that, and you be on the development side, you know this better than anyone. Land cost. And it makes it tough to do certain things, because even if the builder wants to build a larger home, the cost of land is the cost of land. And unless we have, obviously this is very major, so I don't want to downplay that at all, but I mean, we would almost need to see, the entire U.S. economy completely shut down for a very long time to see land prices severely drop in cost. And you can't build any more of it. That's the biggest expense. So, how much it costs more than anyone to buy a piece of land and then subdivide it, entitle it. So it's a double-edged sword. It's what the consumer will want, what the builder will want to do. And most consumers, obviously, there's no hidden fact to this, at least the calls that we've been having. Consumers want to feel good during this. How do they feel good? They feel good because they get a deal. Well, double-edged sword. You're not going to get a deal and build exactly what you want, because that piece of land is the cost, and it's not going down anytime soon, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, for a builder, the process is so long, right? I mean, you're talking about Rough Hollow, 16 years, whatever. I mean, even anything that has a delivery of lots within the next 12 months the land has probably been purchased under contract for a couple of years. So, you're talking about for anybody, unless it's some sort of distress thing, right? Where it just, somebody's got to get out of the land because they've got other issues that are coming down on them. That base value of the piece of dirt that they're on, to see a correction to the market, to the end buyer, you're talking about 3 years from now, something like that. Anything that's going to get delivered over the next, 12 to 24 months, in all likelihood, that developer or that builder, whoever, has already purchased the land and already paid a premium because of what the market has been going into it. So, yeah, I don't think you're going to see any sort of correction from a land value, maybe ever. I mean, it really depends on how this all plays out. If this continues to be something that 12 months from now, 2 years from now, we're still dealing with, then things will start being delivered from the land side that have, lower values to it. But there's really no signs of that right now, just based on that. I mean, what you're going to get your values with is that builder that has something that's finished today. And, that does no good for a builder to be sitting on something right now. I mean, they got to, the way they do that is they have to turn that over and start a new one. So the deals are going to be, in that production builder world, stuff that they got to just keep stuff moving through the pipeline. And, it's done right now. But anything, in talking to the builders, a couple of builders I've talked to are actually going to do a few more specs now than they normally would, thinking that the other builders are going to overcorrect, and there won't be, 8 months from now or 12 months from now, or whatever that build time is, there won't be anything that'll be there because the other builders aren't filling that need. So it's the stuff that's finished today is the stuff that you're going to get some chance at getting some sort of value out of. But other than that, that's going to be tough.
I was talking to a client actually this morning via email, and the simple fact is when people start thinking about building, because they're like, oh my God, I got to go beat up the builder and get their prices down. Well, one is, most of the trades, unfortunately, and this is not a discriminatory factor, it's a lot of
when this all started happening, have a lot of family there. They went back to take care of family. Unfortunately, they couldn't get back into the country. So you have a lot of people that are still here, but you also have a big part of workforce that may not be in the country right now and can't come back. So they were already working on a lot of labor that was suppressed because they can't have as many people on the job site. Then you have some that just aren't going to come to work because they're not around. A lot of your supplies are coming from all over the place. These factories where the supplies are coming out of, even in the U.S., are working on a skeleton crew. So, I mean, the cost of labor, which people think, oh my God, it's got to go down because no one's working, everyone needs jobs. That's too soon. And the simple fact is, right now, it's more expensive because where are you going to find labor, and you can only have so many on a job, and your supplies. I mean, we're all seeing it with Amazon. I used to be able to get something from Amazon the same day. Now, I don't know when it's ever going to come. And I just sort of sit back and be like, hey, I've been waiting 2 weeks and it's a simple product, but it's not here. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it'll take some time, if there is called a correction in the cost to build, it's going to take some time for that to play out. From the material side, the reality is a lot of stuff comes from China, right? Your light fixtures, your tiles, all that type of stuff. And certainly there's going to be, whether it's delays because of that, or the builder has to shift where they get their supplies from and have to pay more than what they would have paid. There's that factor on the labor side. Yeah, again, it's does it all play out because there's other labor and other, hospitality and all those other places. I mean, as being both a builder and a developer, I can tell you on the builder side, we're certainly going out there and trying to push that to see if there's any room to get those opportunities to save. So far, it really hadn't played out, but it's, as a builder, we have to go pursue that because it just makes good business sense, but it hasn't shown itself yet.
No. And like you said, I mean, most stuff comes out of China, and you and I both, you're in the building side every day, but you and I both build homes for ourselves. And I know when I go to the granite yard, and there's one granite and there's another granite, and the one is beautiful. And I ask them, they say it's from Israel. I don't even ask how much it is, because I just know the cost is through the roof, and it's beautiful, but it's not going in my house. So people don't seem to understand sourcing from other parts of the country is expensive. China, lo and behold, is the cheapest place to get most of our supplies from. And while this is going on, unfortunately, it's not like we can shift gears and save money. It's just going to cost us more.
Yep, sure.
Crazy. So, sort of wrap this up and look at things. And I'm not asking for a prediction, because I will never predict anything, because I have no idea where things are going to go. And you and I've already talked about this. But I don't know, 5 to 10 years from now, providing we've seen the worst of it and we all start moving. I don't know, you as a developer, if there's any business that looks into the future, it's a developer. What are your guys' thoughts? Is it too soon to even speak on it, or what are your guys' thoughts for moving another decade?
Well, developers by nature are eternal optimists. So let me start with that, because if we weren't, it'd be hard to be in the development business, because you just have to move so far ahead, and you have to take big risks on land. But it's really about there's going to be adaptation and shifts based on what's happened. I mean, I think that I don't think anybody thinks that it's just going to go back to what it was. There's going to be a new normal, and what does that look like? Who knows? I mean, I think fundamentally, especially if we're talking, we go down to the micro of Austin or Lakeway or whatever, again, sort of going back to, where do you want to be, right? This is one of the places to be. So I think that relatively speaking, we're in a good spot, and, one of the best spots that you can be, versus other places. But, we haven't even talked about oil and what's going on with that, and how all that plays out, especially as, we get a lot of people that come from Houston too. So, how does that factor in, and when does that sort of stabilize? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's anywhere near that sort of playing out. And I think that was going on totally independent of, I mean, certainly there's a consumption aspect of it that has had an impact, but, from what I understand, there's a lot of other factors that were going on. I think even if we didn't have this virus, the oil industry would be having some issues right now. So it's just like I said, it's just hard to say. But, if you want to just, for the people in general, take solace in the fact that, this is still a great place to be, and it's got, all the right, both physical beauty, got the diversity of the city, it's got, the university, and it's got tech, I mean, whether they still want to build offices or not, I think is another question, but, those guys are here, and they're invested, and they're not going anywhere. They just build smaller offices in the future. I think that's all to be determined, but, I do feel like America and we're an incredibly resilient country, and we're going to figure out some way somehow, and we're not going to let what's happening now just crater what's going on, and everybody will get creative and figure out better ways to do things, and I think it's going to accelerate some things that were probably trends that were already happening, like all the telecommuting and all the online shopping and all that just had to take a huge leap. Your mom and pop retailer had to figure out different ways to do things that survive. So I think that at the end of the day that things are going to be okay, and we're going to figure it out. It's just, is it going to be is it going to be in the same place a year from now, or 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that it would have been without the virus? I highly doubt it. But will it still be a vibrant, growing place to be? I think so, especially relatively speaking. It's just how vibrant and how good, and what kind of activity is there going to be in 5 years or 10 years that it would have been had this not happened. That's there's just so much else that needs to be figured out, vaccine, all that type of stuff. But I do think we're just talking about the Austin market generally, or Central Texas. We're in as good a place as you can be. So everybody has to take some comfort in that, and then just be better than the next guy, because just like when it's a market correction because of, just economic conditions, again, like we were talking about in the beginning, the cream rises to the top. So that's where, you just got to be better than the next person.
No, I completely agree, and you said it extremely well. So I feel the same way, and we're very fortunate to be in Austin, and I do think Austin is going to have its lumps as well, but I do think we're going to rebound faster than most. And I think there's a couple of markets in the country I won't speak on just because I don't know them, but I do think there's some really good markets that will fare better. But we're all in it for the long haul, and we'll see where it all lies. Because right now, you and I did speak. The predictions are getting to be a little gross feeling because no one knows, and anyone speaking on what the belief of where we're going to be is just speaking out of pure, and I think they're all speaking out of goodwill. It's just you can't speak on it because none of us have ever been in this before. So I think just being positive, being optimistic, and knowing what we have ahead, and knowing that we will have some challenges to overcome is probably the best way to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, Bill, thanks again, and appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Again, Legend Communities. I know we've spoke a lot about Rough Hollow because it's here. It's in the Lake Travis school district. It's a thriving community. It's again been going on for 16 years. Lived through a downturn. Hatham Dollop, the founder of Legend, and the one that sort of had this vision, sitting on his boat and dropping an anchor 16 years ago or 18 years ago, has been pretty smart on developing and controlling a project to make sure that it's long lasting. It could have easily fallen and crumbled during the last downturn very easily, and it didn't. It's got the lake aspects. It's got a lot of good things, but on top of that, Legend is in. They've built in the reserve. They've built off LBJ. They've built down at the coast. They're building down at the coast. They're in Central Austin. So again, I think Bill was the best person to sort of listen to, in my opinion, because he's not a one-trick pony. He's just not building Rough Hollow. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks again, and I'll let you get on with your day. Have a good day, man.
All right, you too. Thanks.